Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. I'm Ty Glenn. Hopefully you guys are having a great Friday. It is now the NHL Offseason. It is the first day of summer, by the way. And it's also the first off-season episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast in 2025, following the Panthers' back-to-back Stanley Cup championship win over the Edmonton Oilers on Tuesday, June 17. We are now shifting from playoff mode to off-season mode. We are now in the NHL off-season. But before we go ahead and get started with the off-season news on this first off-season episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast, just a couple announcements. As always, if you're watching the Hockey Talk with TG podcast on YouTube, hit this episode with a like, hit it with a subscribe button. If you are listening to the Hockey Talk with TG podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, make sure to follow the Hockey Talk with TG podcast on there. We're with you guys every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11:30 a.m. to noon Central Time, 12:30 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So, want to make sure that you are following the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Hit that notification bell. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that follow button on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio so you can stay up to date on the latest NHL news. We're going to be grinding and doing episodes, putting out a lot of hockey content on the Hockey Talk with TG podcast and also on the TG Hockey channel all off season. This is where you want to be. This is the podcast where you want to be for all the off-season news. So make sure to hit that notification bell, hit that big red subscribe button on the bottom right corner of your screen if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or iHeartRadio. Make sure to hit that follow button, hit that notification button on there if you will, so you can stay up to date on the latest episodes of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Also, another announcement. In case you guys didn't see this hat on my head, I know for the audio listeners, if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio, you can't see it. But to the people who are watching it on YouTube, this is my very own TG Hockey hat. It is on the TG Hockey store. I have my own store called the TG Hockey store, and you can get your merch today on there. I said this on my takeaways video from the 2024-25 NHL season on the TG Hockey channel. I said it on there. I'm saying it first on the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. So I have my own merch store called the TG Hockey store, and if you're watching on YouTube, this hat that I'm wearing is my own TG Hockey hat from the TG Hockey store. You can get all your merch on there, from hats, from hoodies, sweatshirts, t-shirts, all different kinds of accessories and merch. Make sure to get your copy today. And if you do get it, if you tag me on my social media accounts, I will put them all in the description for you guys. If you tag me on Instagram at Ty the Hockey Boy, or on my Twitter at Ty_Glenn_hockey, or even on my TikTok, TyGlenn678, I will repost your picture to my story. I will share them on my story. So but that's just you tag me. That's just you get the merch as well. But just wanted to let you guys know, get your merch today on the TG Hockey store. I will put the link in the description for you guys, and I'll also put it in the comments down below. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the off-season news on this first off-season episode in 2025 of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. And the first thing right off the bat, I heard people talking about following the Panthers' Stanley Cup win over the Oilers. People have been asking, are the Panthers now a dynasty? Are they now a dynasty after winning back-to-back Stanley Cups? Are they now a dynasty after going to 3 Stanley Cup finals? And lots more other questions to follow after that. And if you ask me, I will say yes, the Panthers are a dynasty. You look at the work that Bill Zito has did, I believe, from the start of I would say that started the 2021-22 season. The reason why I want to start from there is because that's when he first brought in head coach Paul Maurice. And the Panthers, fun fact, I did say this on the Hockey Talk with TG podcast, on my episode where I talked about the Panthers' back-to-back Stanley Cup championship wins. The Panthers have won 11 of their last 12 playoff series under head coach Paul Maurice, and he came in as the Panthers head coach in 2022 after they fired Andrew Burnett as their head coach. So the dynasty, the start of the dynasty kind of started somewhere in there. 2021-22 season, I would say probably starting there. So they brought in head coach Paul Maurice after firing Andrew Burnett, who's now the head coach of the Nashville Predators. And then the biggest blockbuster trade, the Panthers brought in Matthew Tkachuk from the Calgary Flames. They brought in all these other different assets and players who could help contribute to the Panthers and help them go back to Stanley Cup Final, which in 2023 was their first Stanley Cup Final appearance since 1996. Of course, it was a loss to the VGK Vegas Golden Knights, but Matthew Tkachuk guaranteed that the Panthers will be back in 2024. They were back in 2024, and they won the Stanley Cup, their first Stanley Cup in franchise history. Of course, you have Brandon Montour on the team, who's now on the Kraken. You have OEL, Alva Ekman-Larsson on the team, who's now on the Maple Leafs. You have all these other different players on the team. Then, at the time, they won in 2024 Stanley Cup. And then people were asking, could the Panthers go back-to-back? Which the Panthers did go back-to-back. And they were sure a Stanley Cup contender after, winning in 2024. And then the Panthers upgraded their depth even more. I'm not sure if that made sense right there, but they upgraded their depth even more. They brought in Brad Marchand from the trade deadline, a trade that shocked a lot of people besides the Matthew Tkachuk trade. And then the Seth Jones trade, they bring in Seth Jones from my Chicago Blackhawks, which as a Blackhawks fan, happy that he is on a Stanley Cup contender. Of course, it didn't work out well in Chicago. It wasn't so much of a friendly exit. I know a lot of Blackhawks fans hate on Seth Jones, mostly because he sucked in Chicago. And he was also frustrated in Chicago. He didn't want to be in Chicago. He didn't want to be on a losing team. I understand that. I wish the exit could have gone smoothly, though. But he was frustrated, wanted to be on the Stanley Cup contender. He got on the Stanley Cup contender with the Florida Panthers and won his first Stanley Cup. I know a lot of Blackhawks fans despise that. Like, oh, Seth Jones now Stanley Cup champion. Oh, boy, what a bum. Calling him a bum and, all that other stuff. So a lot of Blackhawks fans despise Seth Jones. But as a Blackhawks fan, for me, I don't despise him. I don't hate him. I did want him off the team, though, because, again, he sucked in Chicago. And another reason why I wanted him off the team was because I didn't see where he could fit into the rebuild, and he deserved to be on the Stanley Cup contender. So that was a nice trade from Kyle Davidson, trading Seth Jones to Florida for Spencer Knight. We got our future goalie. And I did write an article about this on Blackhawk Up, by the way, of how the trade with Seth Jones benefited him and the Blackhawks. Benefited Seth Jones because he wanted to be on the Stanley Cup contender. He got to be on the Stanley Cup contender. He won the Stanley Cup. And it benefited us because we got our future goalie in Spencer Knight. I did do an article about that on Blackhawk Up. Make sure to take a read of it. If you have not already, I will put that link in the description. So, yeah, they bring in all these other players. They really upgraded their roster. They wanted to go on a deep playoff run, and they did. And now they're back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. The first back-to-back Stanley Cup champions since their in-state division and arch rivals Tampa Bay Lightning did it in 2020 and 2021. And also the third team in the salary cap era to win back-to-back Stanley Cups. Of course, you can't forget about Pittsburgh Penguins winning in 2016 and 2017. But yeah, talk about 3 Stanley Cup final appearances for the Florida Panthers in 2023, 2024, 2025. This is a rare feat to do in the modern NHL. By the way, just want to, throw that out there. You rarely see this in today's modern NHL. But, yes, just from saying all those notes that I said before, yes, the Panthers are a dynasty. And now people are saying, could the Panthers go back to to back. I probably wouldn't say that they will go back to back to back. Hopefully they don't go back to back to back because I know people are tired of seeing Florida teams in the Stanley Cup Final. I know Florida, Tampa Bay Lightning, Florida Panthers, a Florida team has gone to the Stanley Cup Final the last 6 years. Tampa Bay Lightning 2020, Tampa Bay Lightning 2021, Tampa Bay Lightning 2022, Florida Panthers in 2023, Florida Panthers 2024, Florida Panthers 2025. So I know everybody's probably tired of seeing the Florida team in the Stanley Cup Final unless you're a Florida resident and if you're a fan of either the Tampa Bay Lightning or Florida Panthers or possibly both, then you're not tired of it. And hockey's certainly growing in Florida with the Lightning and Panthers going to the Stanley Cup Finals. And, of course, Florida Panthers will be hosting Winter Classic for next year, taking on the Rangers. And then the Lightning will be playing the Stadium Series against the Boston Bruins next year. So hockey's definitely growing in the South, in South Florida, in the Sunshine State, as you will. But I'm happy for the Florida Panthers. I did pick the Edmonton Oilers to win the Cup. I wanted them to win the Cup. Fortunately, they didn't win the Cup. But, yeah, I'm happy for Florida. Absolutely deserve this Stanley Cup win. And I think that they are a dynasty just from all those points I mentioned earlier about, them winning back-to-back Stanley Cups, going to 3 straight Stanley Cup Finals, getting all the pieces, bringing in a new voice as the head coach in Paul Maurice. General manager Bill Zito certainly has his work cut out for him. And you got to wonder, are some of the same Florida Panthers going to stay with you guys in the offseason? Because you got Sam Bennett being a free agent. He took home the Conn Smythe Trophy for playoff MVP. You got Brad Marchand, who you brought over at the trade deadline. He's going to be a free agent. You got Nate Schmidt, Aaron Ekblad. You got all these... Dang it, sorry guys, I just moved this mic. You got all these names being free agents come July 1st. And you got to wonder if they're going to stay or if they're going to go. And on the Hockey Talk with TG podcast, I'm going to give you guys my predictions for each of those names I just said. For Sam Bennett, I believe he will stay. I think he's going to stay in Florida. I think he's going to re-sign with Florida, try and win another Stanley Cup with them. So I think he's not going anywhere. Brad Marchand, of course, when he was first brought over at the trade deadline, he was injured. He had no time to play in the regular season, and then he made his Panthers debut technically in the Stanley Cup playoffs because, of course, at the time that they brought him over, he was injured. He couldn't play, and now he comes over to the Stanley Cup playoffs. We talked about on the podcast how he fits so seamlessly into the group. So with that, this is kind of 50-50 for Marshy. I say it's 50-50 because I believe he could stay. He could stay with the Florida Panthers after the playoff performance he had. He's probably going to want to win another cup after winning 2 Stanley Cups so far in his career. Of course, he won in 2011 with the Boston Bruins. Now he wins in 2025 with the Florida Panthers. And he's probably going to want to win another cup. He's probably going to want to go on another deep playoff run with the Panthers. So that's why part of me says I think he'll stay. He probably want to go to another team. Just to explore some options about what's next for Marshy. Just in case if he doesn't want to stay with the Florida Panthers, he could go back to Boston. Could play with his former team, the team that he's played for 14, 15 seasons with the Boston Bruins. Helped them win a cup in 2011. So he could go back to Boston. Could play for the Bruins. I know a lot of Bruins fans would love to see that. I know some people, I wasn't one of these people, by the way, but I know some people would say he could play for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I know a lot of Leafs fans won't like that. Bruins fans definitely won't like that, considering, and mostly, probably Leafs fans probably won't like that better than Bruins fans won't like that, considering how dominant Brad Marchand has been to the Toronto Maple Leafs in this playoffs and during his time with the Boston Bruins. Nate Schmidt, I don't know. He could go somewhere else. For Aaron Ekblad, I think he'll want to stay with the Panthers. Of course, he's been a Panther for a long time now, and he probably doesn't want to go anywhere else. So I think he's going to stay with the Florida Panthers. So, yeah, but that's my talk. That's my thoughts on the Florida Panthers becoming a dynasty, if they are a dynasty, which I believe they are a dynasty. And those are my thoughts on the free agents for the Florida Panthers, because, of course, a lot of big names heading the free agent market. I just thought maybe I'd discuss them on the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. We're going to be moving on to the losers of the Stanley Cup Final, the Edmonton Oilers, losing the Stanley Cup Final for the second straight year against the same Florida Panthers team. Where does Edmonton go from here? Particularly, what's next for Connor McDavid? His 8-year, $12.5 million contract deal will come to an end after the 2025-26 NHL season. And you got to wonder, where does Edmonton go from here? Of course, Connor McDavid will be a UFA in 2026, by the way. And according to Connor McDavid, the Oilers, quote-unquote, never found a way past Florida's relentless forechecking depth, and also said that they were, quote-unquote, banging our heads against the wall and trying the same tactics over and over again. And I kind of agree with that. It felt like the Oilers were just playing catch-up at that point. Like Connor McDavid said himself, we lost to a really good team. Nobody in the Oilers room had quit. Nobody threw in the towel. That's what he had to say. I kind of just summed up what he said because he didn't say exactly that. When I said it to you guys, I just summed up what he said. But as I talked about on Wednesday's episode of the Hockey Talk TG podcast, Oilers lost in the Stanley Cup Final for these reasons. First period woes, goaltending, lack of depth scoring, no defense, and not Connor McDavid showing up. And I know for that last part, a few people argue with me saying, disagree with what I said about Connor McDavid not showing up. Connor McDavid has not shown up in the Stanley Cup Final. He only had one goal in 6 games. We haven't seen a lot from Connor McDavid in the Stanley Cup Final for one thing. That's the main reason why I say he hasn't showed up. Another thing is, we usually will see him dominate on the special teams on the power play for the Edmonton Oilers. I almost said Florida Panthers right there, but I meant to say Edmonton Oilers. And we haven't seen Connor McDavid step up on the power play. We haven't seen him step up overall in the Stanley Cup Final. So that's why I said no, Connor McDavid stepping up. 1 goal in 6 games in the Stanley Cup Final is not enough. But overall, the Oilers just had no rhythm against Florida. Again, they were playing catch-up. No new game plan whatsoever. They were just the same team throughout the Stanley Cup Final. They were reactive and not adaptive. They couldn't strategize. They couldn't pull away. They couldn't figure out a new game plan, a new system of what to do and how to solve it. They ran into a great Florida Panthers team with a lot of depth on their team. The Panthers' depth was key throughout the series. That was the X factor of why they won. And the Oilers, it's going to be a busy offseason for sure. I mean, they nearly have $12 million in cap space. And they're going to definitely look to sign Evan Bouchard, who's going to be an RFA coming up this offseason, and try and extend Connor McDavid. But Connor McDavid said himself that he's, quote-unquote, in no rush with his contract deal. He spoke to the media about it. He said he's in no rush with his contract. I know a lot of people were saying, where could Connor McDavid go? I know some people were saying he can go to the Leafs, which that would be something if Connor McDavid to go to the Leafs. Or some people were saying, come to the Florida Panthers. If you can't beat them, join them. I mean, that's what Corey Perry tried to do with the Tampa Bay Lightning after losing to them twice with Dallas and Montreal in 2020, 2021. Of course, he lost with Tampa in 2022 against Colorado. Corey Perry's actually lost 5 of his 6 last Stanley Cup Finals. He's lost 5 of his 6 last Stanley Cup finals. He's lost with Dallas in 2020, lost with Montreal in 2021, lost with Tampa in 2022. He lost with Edmonton twice, 2024 and 2025. So he's lost 5 of his 6 last Stanley Cup final. But he's going to be a UFA come July 1st. So was Jeff Skinner, Connor Brown, Kasperi Kapanen, and Trent Frederick before. I think the Oilers were trying to close in on an 8-year deal with Trent Frederick. So they're going to try and extend his contract so he can still be on the team. But it's going to be a lot of changes for this Edmonton Oilers team after losing in the Stanley Cup final 2 years in a row to the same Florida Panthers team. And you got to remember, it's the coaching position in jeopardy because it just can't be Connor McDavid. And I think PK Subban made a great point about this on First Take. You got to wonder if some of the front office people are doing a good job at organizing this team. Because hockey is a team sport. It can't just be one person alone. Like, it's not in basketball where LeBron James dominates for his team. It's not like in football where Tom Brady dominates for his team. It's not like that. It is the team sport. Everybody on the team has to contribute. Everybody on the team has to put in some effort, and I believe PK Subban made a great point about that on First Take with Stephen A. Smith. Of course, I said before that it's kind of funny to see Stephen A. Smith talk about hockey considering he knows nothing about hockey. It's also great overall because you want to try and get the non-hockey people just to, kind of talk hockey with you every once in a while. So it's both funny and great to see Stephen A. Smith talk about hockey with PK Subban, or if Gary Bettman's on the show, talk about hockey with him. But anyway, I think PK Subban made a great point about the front office possibly being the ones to blame on the First Take. So you got to wonder if Chris Conblock's coaching job is in jeopardy after losing in back-to-back Stanley Cup finals. I know the Dallas Stars made a coaching change with firing Pete DeBoer after losing in 3 straight Western Conference final appearances. Maybe the Oilers could follow in a similar step. Could we see Stan Bowman getting fired as general manager of the Edmonton Oilers? Of course, Stan Bowman wasn't the Stan Bowman that was the general manager of my Chicago Blackhawks, putting together this Blackhawks team to be the actual real dynasty with 3 cups in 6 years, 2010, 2013, and 2015. Of course, no team beats the Blackhawks dynasty team with Kane and Taves, Keith and Seabrook, Johnson, Crawford, Hossa. I can go on and on with that list, mostly because I'm a Blackhawks fan, and I should know all too well about the Blackhawks dynasty team. The Florida Panthers, yes, they did win back-to-back Stanley Cups in 2024 and 2025, but no team, and I mean no team, will ever beat the Blackhawks dynasty team when they won 3 cups in 6 years. But speaking of the Blackhawks has signed Ryan Donato to a 4-year, $4 million contract deal. On Wednesday, his 4-year, $4 million contract deal will run through the 2028-29 NHL season. And I believe this was a great move from Kyle Davidson. This was an absolute W. Ryan Donato had a great 2024-25 season campaign with the Chicago Blackhawks, putting up 62 points in 80 games played. That was a career high type season for Ryan Donato. 31 goals, 31 assists for 62 points in 80 games played. He led the Blackhawks in goals, assists, points, power play goals with 5, and game-winning goals with 3. So that was just, he was one of the stars for sure on the Blackhawks in 2024-25 season. And I can't wait to watch more of Ryan Donato, what he can bring to the group. He's proven himself a lot this past season with the Blackhawks, and I can't wait to see more from him. And this is what General Manager Kyle Davidson has to say on signing Ryan Donato. He said this, and I quote, "Ryan brings energy and competes hard every game, which has been a huge asset to our team. over the last 2 seasons. He's been a crucial part of our offense, and we're excited for Ryan to continue to make a difference in our lineup for the next 4 years. And Ryan Donato, he also contributed with a bit of physicality too, being third on the Blackhawks list this season with 104 hits. And his best game was where he had a 4-point night against Nashville in February with 2 goals, 2 assists, which was also him hitting his 200 career plateau milestone, 200 career NHL point milestone right there. So I can't wait to see what Ryan Donato does for next season. Probably an even better season out of Ryan Donato for next season. And I'm most definitely looking forward to that Frank Nazar breakout season next year. He's going to have a breakout season. You heard it here first, because Frank Nazar, certainly another Blackhawk star that has proven himself this past season, being called up from the AHL, going to the Blackhawks roster, and certainly proved himself on the Blackhawks roster, proved himself in the World Championship this year. So that Frank Nazar breakout season, boy oh boy, would that be something. And I hope that he bees on Team USA's Olympic roster. But anyway, overall thoughts about the Ryan Donato sign. Again, absolute W from Kyle Davidson. This was a great move, and I'm certainly looking forward to this Blackhawks roster next season. And I don't think the Blackhawks are going to be done with the offseason moves. Obviously, it's going to be a big season for the Hawks, and they are trying to move that 3rd pick up, trying to trade for that 3rd pick, so they can be a 1 and 2 spot, try and get Michael Misa, which all Blackhawks fans really want to see. But if the Blackhawks don't get Michael Misa, I'm fine with them getting either Porter Martone, because they could use a little physicality and grit on their team. They don't have that on the team. They could get Caleb Denoyer. I think he'll be a great player for the Hawks. Or they could get Anton Frundell. All in all, I know the Blackhawks, they're going to be looking to move that 3rd overall pick. But if they fail to do it, I'm totally fine with that, because 3rd overall is not a bad pick for the Hawks. I mean, Jonathan Taves was drafted 3rd overall. Kirby Dach drafted 3rd overall. And there's been a few other Blackhawks players that have been drafted 3rd overall. So 3rd overall, and they have certainly proved themselves. They have been great players for the Blackhawks at 3rd overall, even though Kirby Dach played for the Blackhawks for a short amount of time, and then he was traded to Montreal. But still, 3rd overall is not a bad spot for the Blackhawks. So if they don't, but I know they're going to be looking to trade for that 3rd overall pick. But we'll just have to see how everything goes with that. The NHL draft is next Friday, and I'll be doing an episode of Hockey Talk TG Podcast just specifically talking about the NHL draft. It'll be a full episode just talking about the NHL draft. I don't think I'll be mentioning anything else. But moving on to other contract deals that happened so far, getting into this NHL offseason. Matthew Shane, he signs a 4-year, $18 million contract deal with the Stars on Thursday, and his contract will start next season and will run through the 2028-29 NHL season. He was set to become a UFA on July 1st, but he wanted to stay with the Dallas Stars. He led Dallas with 82 points in 82 games played this season, 30 goals, 52 assists for 82 points in 82 games played, marking a point per game pace. His 52 assists are a career high, and he had the most points by Dallas Stars since Jason Robinson did it in 2022-23 season. He has 6 points in 18 playoff games this season. Of course, Dallas Stars losing to the Oilers in the Western Conference Final for the 2nd straight year, and also their 3rd Western Conference Final loss. Their 3rd straight Western Conference Final loss, I should say. But yeah, he has 6 points in 18 playoff games. Played this Stanley Cup playoffs, 1 goal, 5 assists for 6 points in 18 playoff games. Matthew Shane said that he really, quote unquote, believed in the Stars group, and he wanted to be on the team. And General Manager Jim Neal had to say this on re-signing Matt Duchene. He said this, and I quote, "As our team's leading scorer last season, he helped to solidify our forward group while also providing invaluable leadership off the ice and in the community." So, a great veteran to have on your team for sure. The Dallas Stars have a lot of depth on their team, and they're definitely going to be having a busy offseason after, the third straight Western Conference final loss. And, of course, you got the firing of head coach Peter DeBoer, which shocked a lot of people considering his record in Game 7. I think 9-0, 7-0, 9-0. I think he has a perfect Game 7 record overall, though. But the Dallas Stars weren't done yet. They made another move. They traded Mason Marchment to the Seattle Kraken for a 2025 fourth-round pick and a 2026 third-round pick. So, I don't know why Dallas did this. This move kind of shocked me. They just basically traded a solid, great player in Mason Marchment for a bag of chips or coins, as you like to call it. But Mason Marchment does have 1 year remaining on his 4-year deal that he signed with the Stars in July of 2022. Carrying that $4.5 million cap hit, he tallied 47 points in 62 regular season games this season with Dallas, 22 goals, 25 assists for 47 points in 62 regular season games. And during his 3 seasons with the Stars, he had 131 points in 211 regular season games, 56 goals, 75 assists for 131 points in 211 games played, 16 points in 49 playoff games, 8 goals, 8 assists for 16 points in 49 playoff games. I guess this was kind of a great move for the Dallas Stars because they did free up $4.5 million in cap space, especially after signing Matt Duchene to a 4-year, $18 million contract deal. 2025 fourth-round pick that was sent to Dallas was originally theirs, but they had traded away to, I believe, the Rangers in 2022. But overall thoughts on this? I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. Like I said, they basically traded him for a bag of chips, almost. But we'll just have to see where this goes. I know that Dallas is going to be looking to make some great moves this offseason. And just one more thing before I close out the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. So Nick Bonino announced his NHL retirement on Wednesday. He's going to be joining the Penguins coaching staff under new head coach Dan Muse. He did play for him before during his time in Nashville and with the Rangers. During his time with the Predators and Rangers, he played them as a player. And I think this is fitting for that, not because of, having that chemistry with Dan Muse, but also he won 2 Stanley Cups with the Penguins in 2016 and 17. So going to be looking to help this Penguins team go to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Looking to have a playoff team. Just have one more year with Sidney Crosby and Getty Malkin and Chris Letang, the trio in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Speaking of which, I heard the Penguins weren't going to be re-signing Getty Malkin after the 2025-26 season. And it's probably going to be the end of an era in Pittsburgh for Getty Malkin. So again, as I said before, just have one more year where you have Crosby, Malkin, Letang in the playoffs together before Getty Malkin departs from Pittsburgh. Because after next season, after 2025-26 season, we won't be seeing any more of Getty Malkin in Pittsburgh. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Hockey Talk with TG Podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. Really do appreciate it. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe on YouTube. If you are watching the Hockey Talk with TG Podcast, make sure to listening to the Hockey Talk with TG Podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. Make sure to give me a follow on there. Make sure to hit that like, subscribe button on YouTube. We are with you guys every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11:30 a.m. to noon Central Time, 12:30 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So you want to make sure that you are staying up to date on the latest episodes of Hockey Talk TG Podcast. Don't forget to get your merch from the TG Hockey Store. I will put that link in the description. Of course, you saw the hat that I was wearing. That is my own hat from my store, the TG Hockey Store. Make sure to get your merch today. And if you do get it, if you tag me, I will repost your pictures to my stories. I'll drop my social media account links in the description below for you guys. Both of you guys have a great rest of your day. Keep God first as always. Be blessed. I'll see you guys Monday for another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Enjoy your weekend and take care.